Well, this is part of a three-part blog. What covers three serious topics. One is duality. Another topic is called linguistic accuracy and casting spells and reciting spells. And the other one is knowing the difference between occult pandering and true occult. It's very simple, actually. So the first thing I'm going to cover is called duality. So it's the reason why I'm going to cover it first is because it's a bit of a tough um, subject to understand, and as in all my blogs, if you think what I'm saying doesn't make any sense, then just log it in your mind as bullcrap. But if it does make sense, lock it in your mind as something that should be noticed from time to time. Okay, so duality, what is this? Well, like many of my blogs, this is stuff you can't find on YouTube or on the internet, basically. I don't know why that is. I think it has to do with true occultists not sharing certain things, which I believe they should be shared. So let's talk about duality, okay? So what is duality? Duality means, obviously, it's from the word dual, which is a basic Latin word. It means two. It means two things becoming one. Duality. That's what it means. So, the double meaning, as it were. But what does it mean in the occult? Well, I'm going to explain what this means. So, in the world of science, you have stuff that is only proven through like Newtonian or mechanical science, which means basically the stuff you can see, test, and measure in science. And then you have the world of the occult. The occult simply means hidden. That's what the occult means. Even if you look in the Spanish roots of the word occult, it really means to hide. And it's not necessarily that the occult is hiding in general. What it is, it means it's not mainstream knowledge. And because it's not mainstream knowledge, it's hidden knowledge. And this is where the term the occult comes from, occult. Okay. And the people who practice these hidden knowledge and hidden crafts are called occultists. I am clearly an occultist. Clearly. I've always been that way. I may have been born an occultist, by the way, because I have family that just were occultists before me. I'm also a Christian. Okay, so what does that mean when I say I'm a Christian? That doesn't mean that I'm a Christian from a church. I don't believe in religions. I don't think there should be religions. I believe I'm a Christian in the sense that I actually worship historical Jesus Christ. Not the mythological Jesus Christ, but the historical Jesus Christ, and I follow the campaign of Christ, as in the first century, like when he was alive and the immediate years after his death. The reason why I don't really follow much of anything other than that is because I think they're written by men. They're just stuff written by men, added on and edited and so forth. Okay, so I want to make that clear before I got out into I don't know. I guess some people might think it's scary. I don't know. A subject that is scary, duality. So let me explain this to you. Okay. So earlier I talked about the world of science, the things that you can see and measure and touch, and prove. Okay, in the physical world. That means the reality, the real world we live in, the world of physics. Okay. Newtonian and mechanical science usually proves this. All right, so then we have the occult world, the spiritual world, and that includes a lot of religions and people's different various beliefs, and also different cultic beliefs from many different cultures and so forth. Okay, so a lot of people think these things are separate, but they are not, and that's one of the most important lessons you can learn while you're in the occult. So science is always right. It's always right. Scientists are not always right. They're always messing up. So in religions, some religions got certain things right, and a lot of things they mess up. Okay, so they share that in common. So how do you know what's right and what's wrong? Well, you know it really by doing one particular practice, and that's by observing nature. That means pay attention to what nature is telling you. That means paying attention to the way the world reacts and acts that you live in. Okay, that's what that means, because whether it's bad or good, the nature is never going to lie to you. Okay, it's unbiased. All right, so we got that part. Now let's talk about the scary stuff, as they say. Okay, monsters, demons, spirits, sicknesses, illnesses, and death, and all that. All right. So there's a lot of cultures that believe there's demons. Okay, demons in the world, are in the in our world, in our reality, are just living or existing in the outskirts of our reality. There's a lot of religions that believe this as well. They talk about evil spirits. Okay, obviously you can't go around anywhere in any cult venue where people are saying, well, let me give you spiritual healing, or let me give you spiritual cleansing, or you go to a religious person and they might say, well, let me bless this house and so forth and so forth. Okay. So most of the time, this is bullcrap, like 90% of the time. But 10% of the time, it's not, and it works in a different way. It works through duality. So I'm gonna get right down to the nitty gritty and describe what duality means. All right. So if a person says, if you hear a story about a person being possessed and all that, 9 times out of 10 it's crap. It's silliness. But sometimes it's not. Okay, so what is that person being possessed by? Okay, so a spirit, a bad spirit, or a mental illness. Okay, schizophrenia, brain disease, brain disorders, behavioral disorders, post-traumatic stress disorder, living life under a certain philosophy or culture. Okay, now I'm familiar with all of these things, so a lot of these things happen to me. I'm not saying I was never possessed or anything. I certainly wasn't. But what I'm talking about is I lived a life where I lived a strange life as a kid. I'm just gonna leave it at that. So my thing is that mental illness, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, clinical depression. Okay, all these things are in tune with what people call evil spirits or evil manifestations. Now that doesn't mean that there's no such thing as evil spirits and they're just simply sick. Now that's what most people in a scientific classification, whether they're psychologists or psychiatrists or so forth or social workers, will want you to believe. But what they're ignoring is something that is probably more true to nature, and that is they have they provide the same result. So if a person believes they're possessed and they go out and they kill someone, for example, or they kill themselves, they're suffering from all types of mental disorders. So both science and the occult are true. So one is not right and the other one isn't right. So they're both right, and this is where duality comes into place. It means that the results are the same. That's what it means. The results are the same. So let me explain something to you. Okay. Now, it may be that the diagnosis of schizophrenia, post-traumatic stress disorder, clinical depression, all these things, brain chemical imbalances, all these things are true. They're not untrue, but they might simply be the actual method or way that evil works in you. You understand that? So let me say this again because it's kind of hard to understand. It's simple, but it's kind of hard to understand, even though it's simple. So in other words, the clinical diagnosis of people who have schizophrenia, post-traumatic stress disorder, clinical depression, and these other things that cause murder and suicide and so forth, may very well be the method used by evil forces. This is called duality. So if that's not the case, what certainly is the case is that the results are the same. Okay, so the Knights Templar, actually it's the Knights of Malta and the Knights Hospitalis, before the Knights Templar knew about this. Okay, and we weren't the only ones to know about this. There's some Chinese, Asian, and Mongolian Chinese. At that time there was there weren't the borders now, so a lot of Mongols and Chinese they were connected. The modern borders didn't exist, but that Asian section, some of the ancient Asian people who practice occult arts realized this as well. So there's a different cultures that came up with this revelation. Okay, so how true is this? How true is it? Well, first of all, you can't you can't prove or disprove it. Okay? Now you have problems even in modern society. When a murderer goes to court, one of the first things they do is trying to figure out if that person is sane or not sane. So in other words, they're really trying to figure out is if their mind was completely overtaken by compulsions and they didn't understand what they were doing. This is a huge thing in court in determining your guilt and so forth. So even today, using scientific methods, this is very vague. Okay. Now, as far as possession, or like in the old school days, medieval times and before medieval times, archaic times, what would happen is that people would blame these things on, uh, demons or bad spirits or invoking or conjuring of spirits and so forth that were ill-willed. They're, in other words, spirits of malice. Okay. You know what? This sounds very, very primitive and very superstitious today. And by in large part, most of it is, but not all of it is. Because there are things that are unexplained by science, okay? Physicists will actually tell you this. That doesn't mean that you're going to see a devil with a horn sticking out. It doesn't work that way. But to say that evil doesn't exist outside of a psychiatric disorder is foolish. Okay, so there's some evil does exist, and that's just just a byproduct of our billions of years of evolution on the planet. You know, so duality. To recap what I was saying, duality means that the psychiatric diagnosis of sick people, and all of us do get sick from time to time. There's not one person on planet Earth that doesn't get sick from one time. Either through depression or maybe have a nervous breakdown or schizophrenic break. That doesn't mean that you're permanently mentally ill. That means that you're under a lot of stress and your mind breaks. Now, the mind, spirit, and the body are connected, and because of that connection, this is the connecting tether between the occult, in other words, the world unseen, and the reality that we live in today. So what happens? This is when you have a problem with true evil, where true evil will exist. Okay, look at if there's some kind of plot where you a compulsion to kill yourself, suicide, or some plot to go kill somebody. You're angry at somebody, you want to kill them. Okay, that's not natural. A lot of people think it's natural, but it's not. That's natural to defend yourself. Yeah, it's natural to do certain things to defend you and your family. But sadistically or eventually trying to kill someone that's not out of defense, it's not natural. And it's usually in these efforts that true evil comes into play. And the way that the evil forces work on the mind is through psychological influence. And that's where these diagnoses and these disorders come into play. So hopefully that was understandable.